In April 1945, the war in Europe was nearly over. The Third Reich was collapsing. Allied forces swept through Germany, documenting the horrors of concentration camps and secret weapons programs. But in the Bavarian Alps near Berchtesgaden, 8 U.S. Army Rangers were about to discover something that would never appear in any history book, something that the military would classify for the next 80 years. This is the testimony of Corporal Raymond Foster, written in his final months before his death, when the statute of limitations on silence finally expired. A story of soldiers who encountered creatures that shouldn't exist, predators engineered in Nazi laboratories, things pulled from folklore and made real through methods we pray have been forgotten. This is not a campfire tale. This is not a legend passed down through generations. This is what happened when human ambition broke the rules of nature, and 4 men barely survived to tell about it. The truck's engine died halfway up the pass, and in the sudden silence, I could hear my own breathing echo back from the rock walls. Staff Sergeant Frank DeLuca killed the ignition completely, and we sat there, 8 Rangers in the back of a deuce and a half listening to the Alps. It was April 28, 1945, and the war was supposed to be over in everything but paperwork. We were mountain warfare training, at least that's what the orders said. Clean out some Wehrmacht supply caches, secure the high passes, make sure no SS diehards were planning a last stand in the Berchtesgaden redoubt. Standard mop-up work. I was Corporal Raymond Foster, 2nd Ranger Battalion, and I had guided elk hunters through Montana's Beartooth Range before the war. Captain Morris picked me for this detail because I knew mountains, knew how to read animal sign, knew the difference between a game trail and a combat approach. What I didn't know was why every village we'd passed through in the last 15 miles had been empty. Not evacuated. Empty. Doors open, cook fires still warm, livestock pens unlatched, like everyone had just stopped what they were doing and walked away. "Klein, what's that say?" DeLuca pointed to a wooden sign nailed crookedly to a pine tree. Private Joseph Klein, Brooklyn accent, but his parents were from Hamburg, climbed down from the truck bed and walked over to it. The painted letters were crude, done in haste. It says, "Turn back. The mountains are eating us." Klein's voice had lost its usual wise guy tone, and underneath, someone wrote, "God forgive us for what we made." DeLuca spat into the roadside snow. Germans and their drama, probably left by some deserters trying to spook the locals. He slapped the truck's hood. "Foster, you and Rossi take point. This supply depot should be 2 clicks up the valley. We secure it, catalog whatever's there, and get back to battalion before dark." The valley opened up ahead of us, pine forest, giving way to alpine meadow still patched with April snow. I could see the supply depot, a cluster of stone buildings tucked against the cliff face, probably a shepherd's station before the Wehrmacht repurposed it. Private First Class Anthony Rossi walked beside me, his Browning automatic rifle held low and ready. Rossi was Philly Italian, built like a fire hydrant, and the most paranoid man I'd ever met. Right then, I was grateful for that paranoia. "Too quiet," Rossi muttered. "Where's the birds?" He was right. No ravens, no jays, nothing. The wind carried the smell of the pines and something else, something that reminded me of the rendering plant outside Billings, old blood and spoiled meat. I raised my fist and the column halted. DeLuca moved up beside me. "What have you got?" "Tracks." I knelt beside a patch of mud where the snow had melted. The print was fresh, maybe an hour old. It looked like a rabbit's hind foot, elongated with 4 toes, except it was the size of my boot, and there were claw marks, deep ones. Something big moved through here, multiple somethings. Technician 5th grade. Martin Schmidt, our combat engineer, came up to look. Schmidt was regular Army, older than the rest of us, and he'd seen action in North Africa before transferring to the Rangers. Could be deer, or mountain goats with the print distorted by melting. Goats don't have claws like that, and they don't travel in packs. I stood up, scanning the tree line. Whatever made this, there's at least 6 of them, moving together. We found the first body 30 meters from the depot buildings. German uniform, Wehrmacht enlisted man, sprawled face down in a stream bed. DeLuca rolled him over and we all took a step back. His throat was gone. Not cut, not shot, torn out, but the wound had punctures around the edges, small and precise, like something with fangs the size of needles had clamped down and ripped. His eyes were wide open, frozen in an expression I'd seen on deer that mountain lions had taken down. Pure prey animal terror. Jesus Christ, Rossi whispered. What did this? Clean was looking at the man's hands. His rifle's gone, sidearm too. But his bread bag's still here in his canteen. Whatever hit him, it wasn't interested in supplies. DeLuca checked the body for papers. No identification. Could be a deserter. Could be someone from the depot garrison. He looked up at the stone buildings, maybe 200 meters away now. We proceed with caution. Schmidt, you and Vasquez check the perimeter. Foster, you and Klein take the main building. Rossi, you're with me on the warehouse. We move quiet. We move smart. Anything that doesn't feel right, you sound off. The main building's door hung open on one hinge. Inside, the smell was worse, that rendering plant stench mixed with cordite and something sharp, almost chemical. The room had been a barracks. Bunks lined both walls, and someone had overturned a table in the center. Spent brass casings littered the floor, 9 millimeters from German MP-40S. The wall above one bunk was stitched with bullet holes, the pattern tight and controlled. Someone had mag-dumped at something in this room. Klein picked up a helmet from under a bunk. There were deep gouges in the steel, parallel scratches that went through the paint and into the metal itself. What the hell has claws that can do this? I was examining the bullet holes when I heard Schmidt shouting outside. Not words, just a raw yell of surprise and disgust. DeLuca got to the door first and I was right behind him. Schmidt was standing 20 feet from the livestock barn, his rifle pointed at the ground, his face the color of old paper. You need to see this, Sergeant. The barn doors were closed and barred from the outside. No tracks led in or out through the snow around it. DeLuca lifted the bar and pulled the door open, and the smell that rolled out made Rossi double over and vomit into the mud. 16 sheep. I counted them because that's what my brain did to keep from processing what I was seeing. They'd been torn apart, not eaten, not slaughtered for food, just destroyed with what looked like methodical rage. The walls were painted with dried blood. In the center of the barn, someone had arranged the skulls in a circle, and in the middle of that circle, carved into the wooden floor with something sharp, was a symbol I didn't recognize. It looked like antlers crossed with wings. This wasn't the Wehrmacht, Klein's voice shook. Germans don't do this. Nobody does this. DeLuca backed out of the barn and closed the door. We document this, we report it, and we let intelligence sort it out. Could be some ritual thing. Hitler's occult nuts playing at being pagans. Could be psychological warfare gone wrong. Either way, it's above our pay grade. That's when we heard the scream from the warehouse, high-pitched, terrified, cut off mid-breath. It was Private Vasquez. We ran. Combat discipline went out the window and we just ran. Boots pounding on the half-frozen mud, rifles up. The warehouse was the largest building, set back against the cliff. Its heavy wooden doors stood open. Inside, the space was dim, lit only by the failing afternoon light through high windows. Crates and barrels lined the walls, Wehrmacht supplies, just like intelligence had said. And in the center of the floor, in a spreading pool of blood, was Vasquez. He was still alive when we reached him. Barely. His chest had been opened, 3 parallel tears through his field jacket, through the flesh beneath. I could see bone. His eyes found mine and he tried to speak, but only blood came out. Medic! DeLuca was screaming it. But we didn't have a medic. Battalion had 1 per platoon, and ours was 2 valleys away. Somebody stop the bleeding? Rossi was already ripping open a field dressing, but we all knew it was too late. Vasquez's breathing was wet and rattling. His hand gripped my wrist with dying strength and he pulled me close. His lips moved and I leaned in to hear him. "Up," he whispered. The word was thick with blood. It came from up. I looked at the ceiling. The wooden beams were 20 feet overhead, dark with shadow, and as my eyes adjusted, I saw them. Shapes. Perched on the beams like birds, but wrong. Too large. Too many limbs. Antlers caught the dying light, and then I saw the eyes. Dozens of them, luminous and intelligent, all watching us with an attention that felt deliberate, predatory. "Contact!" I brought my rifle up, but they were already moving, dropping from the beams with a sound like leather wings unfurling. The first one hit Schmidt and bore him down, and I got my first clear look at what we were fighting. It had the body of a hare, oversized, muscular, but its head was crowned with antlers like a young deer. Wings sprouted from its shoulders, bat-like and membranous, and its mouth. Christ! Its mouth was full of fangs like a wild cat's, set in concentric rows. Rossi opened up with the bar, the weapon's thunder deafening in the enclosed space. I saw one of the creatures take 3 round center mass and keep coming. They were fast, impossibly fast, darting between us like they understood tactics, understood how to divide and confuse. Klein fired his M1 Garand point blank into one that lunged for his throat, and the round punched through it, but it twisted in midair and its claws opened his shoulder like tissue paper. DeLuca was shooting methodically, controlled bursts, but I could hear the fear in his voice as he gave orders. "Fall back! Out of the warehouse! Move! Move! Move!" We dragged Klein toward the door. Schmidt was down, screaming, 3 of the things on him at once. I fired into the mass of them and one shrieked, an awful sound, like a rabbit's death cry mixed with a hawk's scream, but they didn't stop. They were tearing him apart with scientific precision, like they understood human anatomy, knew exactly where to cut. I made it through the door. DeLuca was last out, firing backwards, and one of the creatures followed him into the daylight. In the sun, I could see it clearly. Fur like a jackrabbit, gray and brown, but the antlers were real deer horn, 8 points, and the wings were featherless and veined. Its eyes were amber and far too aware. DeLuca put 2 rounds through its head, and it finally went down, twitching. But from inside the warehouse, I could hear more of them, many more, and they were laughing. I swear to God they were laughing, a chittering sound that mimicked human laughter the way a mockingbird mimics a hawk. "Run!" DeLuca didn't have to say it twice. We ran for the truck, Klein between Rossi and me, his blood soaking through my jacket. Behind us, the warehouse doors slammed open, and they poured out, a flood of fangs and antlers and wings moving like a single organism, hunting us. The truck wouldn't start. DeLuca turned the key and got nothing, not even the clicking of a dead battery, just absolute silence. Klein was propped against the tailgate, his face gray, pressing his jacket against the shoulder wound. Rossi had taken position behind the engine block, his bar trained on the warehouse. I could see the creatures circling in the shadows of the doorway, staying just out of clear rifle range, and that terrified me more than if they'd charged. They were thinking. Waiting. "Pop the hood," I told DeLuca. He pulled the release and I lifted it, already knowing what I'd find. The distributor cap was gone, not damaged. Gone. Removed cleanly, like someone had unscrewed it and taken it. In the dirt beside the front tire, I found tracks. The same impossible rabbit deer bat prints we'd seen earlier, and they led right up to the truck's grill. "They sabotaged it," I said, "before we even got here. They knew we'd run for the vehicle." DeLuca's jaw worked. He was 26 years old, had led Rangers up Pointe du Hoc on D-Day, had cleared pillboxes in the Hurtgen forest, and I watched him struggle to process what I was telling him, that we were being hunted by something that understood modern tactics, something that planned. "The depot has stone walls," he said finally. "We fort up in the main building, put our backs to something solid and wait for relief." "Sarge, nobody knows we're here," Rossi said. "We're not due back until 1800 hours. That's 4 hours from now." He fired a burst at movement near the warehouse, and the creatures scattered. but I noticed they regrouped immediately, just farther back. Learning from each engagement. Klein coughed blood. There's a radio in the main building. I saw it. German military set, still wired to a generator. It was 50 meters to the building. 50 meters of open ground with those things circling us, and Klein could barely walk. DeLuca looked at each of us, really looked, the way a commander does when he knows he's about to order men to their deaths and needs to see them first, needs to remember. Covering fire on my mark, he said. Foster, you get Klein to that door. Rossi, you lay down suppression. Full auto, I don't care about ammo discipline anymore. I'll guard the rear. We move fast, we move together, and we do not stop for anything. Clear? We nodded. DeLuca counted down from 3. The world became muzzle flash and screaming. Rossi's bar hammered out 20 rounds in 3 seconds, and the creatures exploded from cover, not retreating but attacking, using the gunfire as a trigger. I had Klein's arm over my shoulder and we ran, his boots dragging, my lungs burning. Behind us, DeLuca fired his Thompson in controlled bursts, and I heard him swearing in Italian, the words his grandmother had taught him, prayers and curses mixed together. Something hit me from the side, and I went down hard, Klein rolling away from me. I got a glimpse of wings and antlers, felt claws rake across my helmet with a sound like fingernails on a chalkboard. And then Rossi was there, reversing his rifle and smashing the stock into the thing's skull. It shrieked and launched itself at him instead, and I saw his face go white as it latched onto his arm with all 4 sets of limbs. I shot it off him. Point blank, my M1 Goran's muzzle actually touching fur, and the round went through and sprayed the ground with blood that was too dark, almost purple. The creature fell away, but 3 more took its place, and Rossi was backing toward the building, firing one-handed, his left arm hanging useless. DeLuca got the door open. Inside. Now. I dragged Klein through first. Rossi came next, still firing, empty brass casings ringing on the stone floor. DeLuca was last, and I saw one of the creatures latch onto his leg as he crossed the threshold. He didn't even slow down, just brought his Thompson's barrel straight down and blew it off his boot, then slammed the door and dropped the wooden bar into place. Something hit the door from outside, then something else. And something else. The impacts came faster, building to a crescendo, and I could hear that chittering laugh again, dozens of voices in mockery of human speech. The door was solid oak, 2 inches thick, and I watched it bow inward with each strike. The radio, Klein gasped. Corner, under the tarp. The German military radio was a torn .fu.D2, portable set in a metal case, and by some miracle the generator still had fuel. I got it running while DeLuca and Rossi dragged furniture against the door, bunks, tables, anything heavy. The creatures had stopped hitting the door and gone silent, which was somehow worse. I could hear them moving on the roof, their claws scratching on the slate tiles. The radio crackled to life. I spun the dial, searching for the battalion frequency, and got nothing but static. Then I remembered German equipment, different frequencies. I tried the Wehrmacht bands, then the SS channels, and finally caught something, a voice, speaking German, weak and broken with interference. Klein, get over here! He stumbled to the radio, his good hand gripping the table edge for support. His face was the color of old bone. He listened for a moment, then his eyes went wide. It's a loop, he said, a recording, been broadcasting for days, maybe weeks. He listened again, translating as it played. It says, "This is Research Station 13. The specimens have breached containment. We have lost 17 men. The Wolpertinger project is classified Schwarzsonne level. Any forces receiving this message are ordered to withdraw from the Berchtesgaden sector immediately. The specimens are..." He paused. "The specimens are hunting intelligently. They learn from each encounter. Do not engage. Repeat, do not engage. Fall back to..." Static drowned the rest. "Wolpertinger," I said. The word felt wrong in my mouth. "What is that?" Klein's laugh was bitter. "Bavarian folklore. A creature from the mountains, part rabbit, part deer, part bird, part predator. Old hunters' tales to scare children? My grandmother told me stories about them when I was little. He looked at the barricaded door. But those were just stories. These things are real. And the SS made them. DeLuca was checking his ammunition. Made them how? How the hell should I know? But you saw that symbol in the barn. The antlers and wings. That's Wolpertinger iconography. And if the Germans were running some kind of occult weapons program up here, he didn't finish. He didn't have to. The scratching on the roof had stopped. In the silence, I heard a new sound. Tapping, deliberate and rhythmic, on the window shutters. Rossi moved to the window, his mangled arm pressed against his chest. They're trying to open it, from outside. The tapping continued, methodical, testing. We heard wood splinter, then a chittering consultation between multiple voices. They were problem-solving. "We can't stay here," I said. "They'll find a way in eventually." DeLuca pointed at the map on the wall. Wehrmacht tactical map of the valley, marked with defensive positions. "There's a cave system, see, 200 meters up the cliff face. The Germans marked it as unsuitable for munition storage, too unstable. But if we can reach it, we'll have elevation and a choke point." "That's a vertical climb," Rossi said. "Klein can barely walk and my arms shredded. We'd be sitting ducks on that cliff face." Klein had moved to the corner of the room to a wooden crate marked with SS runes and a warning label. He pried it open with his good hand and pulled out something wrapped in oilcloth. When he unwrapped it, I saw mason jars filled with thick, viscous liquid, labels in Gothic script, phosphorus grenades, industrial strength. "The SS wasn't just breeding these things," Klein said. "They were trying to kill them too, when the project went wrong." He held up one of the jars. "White phosphorus, burns at 5,000 degrees. Even if bullets don't stop them, fire might." The window shutter splintered inward, and a clawed limb thrust through, scrabbling for the latch. DeLuca shot it, and the limb withdrew, but we could hear more of them gathering outside, their numbers growing. How many had the SS created? Dozens, hundreds. I made the decision. We use the phosphorus to break contact, create a fire line between us and them. Then we climb. It's either that or die in this room. DeLuca looked at Klein, at Rossi, at me. We were what was left of an 8-man squad. Vasquez and Schmidt were dead. 4 of us remained, 2 wounded, down to maybe 100 rounds of ammunition between us, facing an unknown number of designer predators that had been engineered by Nazi occultists and then set loose when the experiment failed. "All right," he said, "we burned them out." We soaked rags and diesel from the generator tank and stuffed them in the necks of the phosphorus jars. 6 improvised incendiaries. DeLuca and I would throw them while Rossi provided covering fire with what was left of his BAR ammunition. Klein would move first, get to the base of the cliff, and guide us up the climbing route he'd spotted on the German map. "On 3, DeLuca said. He had his hand on the door bar. 1, 2. The roof caved in, not collapsed, pulled down. The creatures tore through the slate and timber like it was cardboard, and suddenly they were dropping into the room with us, a nightmare rain of antlers and fangs and wings. I lit the first jar and threw it without aiming, and the phosphorus ignited mid-air, turning the creature it hit into a living torch. It shrieked, a sound that would wake me up screaming for the next 40 years, and crashed into 2 more, spreading the flame. White phosphorus doesn't just burn. It sticks. It consumes. The creatures tried to beat out the flames and only spread them further. The room filled with chemical smoke, acrid and choking, and I could barely see DeLuca through the haze, but I could hear his Thompson firing, could hear Rossi's bar hammering out its last magazine. Klein got the door open and we poured out into the twilight. The valley was full of them now, shapes moving in the tree line, on the rooftops, circling. Dozens, maybe more, and they were coordinating. I could see it, using flanking movements, cutting off escape routes. We ran for the cliff face, and I threw the second phosphorus jar behind us, creating a wall of white flame that bought us maybe 30 seconds. The cliff route was a nightmare. Natural handholds, barely wide enough for one man at a time, crumbling rock that came away in your hands. Klein went first despite his wounded shoulder, climbing one-handed with a determination born of pure terror. I followed, then Rossi, then DeLuca covering our rear. Below us, the creatures circled, and I saw several of them start to climb. Their claws found purchase where our boots slipped. They were faster than us, better climbers. We were 15 meters up when the first one reached Rossi. He kicked it in the face with his boot heel and it fell, screeching, but another took its place immediately. DeLuca shot that one, and it too fell, but his Thompson's bolt locked back empty. No more ammunition. And the creatures kept coming. "The cave!" Klein was shouting. 20 feet, I can see the entrance." But they were below us, beside us, above us now. Some had climbed past and were dropping down from higher positions. I felt claws rake across my back, felt hot blood soak through my shirt. Beside me, Rossi lost his grip and started to slide, and I grabbed his collar with one hand while clinging to the rock with the other. His weight nearly pulled me off the cliff, but DeLuca grabbed my belt and held us both. And then we were at the cave mouth, dragging ourselves over the lip of stone, collapsing in the darkness beyond. The creatures followed. 3 of them made it inside before DeLuca lit the last phosphorus jar and hurled it at the cave entrance. The white flame erupted, blocking the opening, and the creatures inside with us turned, trapped. We fought them in the dark with rifle stocks and knives and bleeding hands. Close quarters, brutal, desperate. I felt antlers gouge my ribs, felt fangs scrape across my helmet, heard Klein screaming as one of them bore him down. And then Rossi was there with a rock the size of a football, smashing it down again and again until the thing stopped moving. When it was over, we lay in the darkness, listening to our own ragged breathing, listening to the creatures outside shrieking their frustration. The phosphorus fire would burn for hours. We were safe. For now. DeLuca's voice came out of the blackness. "Everybody alive?" 3 affirmative groans. Then we wait for dawn, and we pray to Christ that somebody comes looking for us before those things find another way in. Dawn came through the cave mouth in shades of gray and gold, and with it the sound of helicopters. 2 of them circling the valley, their rotors echoing off the mountain walls. I crawled to the entrance. The phosphorus had burned itself out, leaving scorched rock and the twisted remains of 3 Wolpertingers, and looked down at the depot compound. The creatures were gone, pulled back into the forest or the warehouse, or wherever they denned up during daylight. The valley looked almost peaceful in the morning light. You couldn't see the blood from this high up. DeLuca used his signal mirror to flash at the helicopters. They spotted us within minutes and one peeled off, coming in low, but it didn't land. A voice crackled from a loudspeaker, distorted by rotor wash. "Remain in position. Ground team en route. Do not approach the buildings. Do not engage any wildlife. Acknowledge." DeLuca flashed his mirror twice. Acknowledged. We waited. The ground team arrived an hour later, 30 men in hazmat suits carrying flamethrowers and net guns. They moved through the compound with military precision, but they weren't regular army. No unit patches, no name tags. Their equipment was too new, too specialized. This wasn't a rescue team. This was a cleanup crew. They brought us down the cliff on ropes and loaded us into an armored transport. A medic, also in hazmat gear, worked on Klein's shoulder and Rossi's arm without speaking. Through the transport's reinforced windows, I watched the cleanup crew torch the warehouse. They burned everything, the buildings, the truck, even the trees around the perimeter, creating a fire break, sterilizing the site. "Where are you taking us?" DeLuca asked the medic. The medic didn't answer, didn't even look at him. Just finished wrapping Rossi's arm and moved on to my back wounds, 16 stitches without anesthetic. I gritted my teeth and watched the valley burn. They flew us to a hospital in Munich. Not a regular military hospital, a private facility with armed guards at every door and bars on all the windows. They separated us immediately. put me in a room with white walls and a single bed, and a doctor who asked me questions while a stenographer wrote down everything I said. What did you see? Describe their physical characteristics. How many were there? Did you observe behavioral patterns? What weapons were effective? I told the truth. I was too tired to lie, too angry to be careful. I described everything. The tracks, the body in the stream bed, the massacre in the barn, the warehouse ambush, the climbing creatures, their tactical intelligence. The doctor wrote nothing down himself. Just listened with a face that showed no surprise, no disbelief. He'd heard this before. From other survivors, maybe. From the SS researchers who'd created them. When I finished, he asked one more question. Did any of the specimens follow you away from the depot site? No, I said. They stayed in the valley. Territorial, maybe. Or they don't like open ground. He nodded. That aligns with previous observations. Then he caught himself, realizing he'd said too much. He stood up. You'll remain here for observation. 48 hours. Do not discuss what you experienced with anyone, including your fellow rangers. That's an order. He left. They locked the door behind him. For 2 days I sat in that white room, eating food brought by silent orderlies, being examined by doctors who wouldn't meet my eyes. Through the window, barred but not frosted, I could see other patients in the courtyard, men in hospital gowns with a 1,000-yard stare. Some wore Wehrmacht uniforms underneath their gowns, German soldiers, SS probably, the ones who'd survived Research Station 13. On the third day, a colonel arrived. American, 50 years old, wearing dress uniform with decorations I didn't recognize. He sat across from me and laid a folder on the table between us. My name was typed on the tab. Corporal Foster, I've read your statement. You and your men showed remarkable courage under unprecedented circumstances. He opened the folder. Inside were photographs, the depot compound, but taken weeks earlier, before we'd arrived. The warehouse intact, the barn sealed, and creatures everywhere, dozens of them captured mid-movement by telephoto lenses. Real. Documented. What you encountered in that valley was the result of a German research program codenamed Schwarze Sonne, Black Sun, a combination of selective breeding, surgical modification, and what we believe was exposure to some form of radiation or chemical mutagen. The goal was to create an animal weapon, something that could infiltrate enemy positions, cause casualties, spread terror, and withdraw before conventional forces could respond. The colonel turned the page. More photographs, laboratory equipment, cages, and a group of men in SS uniforms standing beside a table where something with antlers and wings lay restrained. The program was located in 17 different sites across Bavaria and Austria. When it became clear Germany was losing the war, most sites were ordered to euthanize their specimens. This site, Research Station 13, attempted to comply. They failed. The creatures broke containment on April 3rd, killed 37 personnel. The survivors evacuated and the site was sealed. We've been monitoring it since we took this sector. Monitoring, I repeated. You knew they were there. You knew, and you sent us in anyway. The colonel's face remained neutral. We needed current intelligence on specimen behavior and threat level. The Wehrmacht reports were unreliable, colored by panic and supernatural interpretation. We needed rational observers, combat-trained soldiers who could assess the tactical situation. You used us as bait. My voice came out flat, dead. Vasquez and Schmidt died so you could take notes. Your squad sacrifice provided valuable data that will save lives if similar situations arise. The specimens demonstrate limited range. They don't stray more than 2 kilometers from their creation site. They're vulnerable to fire, specifically white phosphorus and napalm. They can be contained with sufficient force. He closed the folder. This information is classified at the highest level. You and your surviving squad members will be transferred to stateside duty, effective immediately. You'll receive medals, silver stars, all of you, and honorable discharges. In exchange, you will never speak of what happened in that valley. Not to family, not to friends, not to other veterans. The official record will show that you encountered German resistance and neutralized it with acceptable casualties. Are we clear? I looked at the folder on the table, at the photographs of creatures that shouldn't exist, at the face of a colonel who was asking me to forget that my friends had died, fighting things that the U.S. Army knew about and had deliberately sent us to encounter. What about the other sites? I asked. You said there were 17. What happened to those specimens? The colonel stood. That's not your concern, Corporal. You focus on going home. Let us worry about cleaning up Germany's mistakes. He picked up the folder. A car will take you to the airfield tomorrow morning. You'll be in New York by the weekend. Try to put this behind you. He left. They unlocked my door that evening. I found DeLuca, Klein, and Rossi in the hospital cafeteria. We sat together without speaking, 4 men who'd climbed out of hell and been told to pretend we'd never been there. Klein's arm was in a sling. Rossi had lost 3 fingers to infection. DeLuca had a limp he'd carry the rest of his life. We didn't talk about the valley. We didn't have to. We could see it in each other's eyes, the memory of things with antlers and wings dropping from the darkness, learning to hunt us. I got back to Montana in May 1945. VE Day had passed while I was in that white room in Munich, and the whole country was celebrating. Ticker tape parades, pretty girls kissing soldiers in Times Square, church bells ringing from coast to coast. I took the train from New York to Billings and watched America slide past my window, farms and factories and cities untouched by war. And I thought about creatures bred in German laboratories, thought about what other weapons might be waiting in hidden bunkers and sealed research stations across Europe. My Silver Star came in the mail 3 weeks later. The citation said I'd distinguished myself in action against enemy forces near Berchtesgaden. It didn't mention Wolpertingers. It didn't mention Vasquez or Schmidt, just vague language about courage under fire and devotion to duty. I put it in a drawer and never looked at it again. I tried to go back to guiding hunters, spent a whole season up in the Beartooths, leading city men to elk and mule deer. But I couldn't do it. Every time I saw tracks in the snow, every time I heard something moving in the brush, I'd freeze up. My hands would start shaking and I'd have to sit down until the fear passed. The hunters thought I was getting old, losing my nerve. They didn't know I was remembering another mountain range, another hunt where the rules had been reversed. Klein wrote to me once, in 1947. He'd gone back to Brooklyn, was working in his uncle's bakery, had married a girl from the neighborhood. The letter was cheerful, full of normal life, until the last paragraph. Sometimes I dream about Bavaria, about things in the warehouse rafters. I wake up and I can still hear them laughing. Do you think they're all dead? Do you think the army got them all? I didn't know how to answer that. Still don't, so I never wrote back. DeLuca died in 1963. Heart attack, according to the obituary. But Rossi called me after the funeral and told me the truth. DeLuca had eaten his service pistol in his garage, left a note that just said, "I can still hear them scratching." They buried him with full military honors, and nobody mentioned that the war had killed him 18 years after it ended. Rossi himself lasted until 1989. Lung cancer. I visited him in the VA hospital 2 weeks before the end. He was skeleton thin, his voice a rasp, but his mind was still sharp. We talked about baseball, about his grandchildren, about everything except Bavaria. Then, right before I left, he grabbed my wrist with his good hand, the one that still had all its fingers. "Foster, you ever go back? You ever try to find out what happened to those things?" I shook my head. "Classified, remember? They'd never tell us." "Yeah." He let go of my wrist and closed his eyes. "Probably better that way. Some things you're better off not knowing." He was quiet for a moment, then, "You think they suffered? Vasquez and Schmidt? Or was it fast?" "It was fast," I lied. "They never knew what hit them." Rossi smiled, knowing I was lying, grateful for it anyway. Good. That's good. He died 3 days later. I'm 91 years old now. Klein's gone, DeLuca's gone, Rossi's gone. I'm the last one left who climbed out of that valley, and I'm writing this because the Army's classification rules said 50 years. After 50 years, the documents get declassified, the secrets get released. It's been 81 years since April 1945, and I figure the statute of limitations on keeping your mouth shut has expired. I don't know if the Army ever went back to Research Station 13. Don't know if they found and killed all 17 specimen populations, or if some of them are still out there, breeding in caves and forests, staying away from humans because they remember what fire and bullets feel like. I don't know if other countries tried the same thing, Soviet Union, China, our own government. I don't know if somewhere there's a warehouse full of files marked Schwarzsonne, with notes on how to do it better next time. What I do know is this. We broke something when we started that war. Not just cities and countries and millions of lives. We broke the rules. We decided that winning mattered more than what was right, more than what was sane. And the Germans weren't the only ones who made that choice. We all did. Every nation with a research budget and a willingness to ask, what if? The Wolpertingers were just the beginning. Chemical weapons, biological weapons, nuclear weapons. We opened doors that should have stayed closed, and we're still living in the world those decisions made, still dealing with the things we created and couldn't control. I have nightmares still, not as often as I used to, maybe once a month now instead of every night. I dream I'm back on that cliff face, feeling claws on my back, hearing that chittering laughter. I dream the creatures followed us home somehow, that they're breeding in the bear-tooths, that one day a hunter will call me and say, Foster, you need to see these tracks. And I'll know we didn't contain them at all. We just gave them time to spread. My grandson asked me once why I never talked about the war. He'd heard the stories from his other grandfather, Normandy, the Bulge, heroic stuff. He wanted to know if I'd done anything like that. I told him I'd done my duty and come home, and that was all there was to say. He looked disappointed. Wanted tales of glory, wanted to hear his grandpa was a hero. I'm not a hero. Heroes are people who face a threat they understand and overcome it through courage and skill. We faced something that shouldn't have existed, something that was designed to turn humans into prey, and we survived by accident and fire and blind luck. That's not heroism. That's just refusing to die. The silver star is still in that drawer. I've thought about throwing it away, but I can't. It's all that proves Vasquez and Schmidt existed, that they died for something, even if that something was just providing data for a colonel's report. Their names aren't on any memorial. Their families were told they died in routine combat operations. The truth is buried in classified files somewhere in Washington, if it hasn't been destroyed. So I'm writing this. I'm putting it down on paper while my hands can still hold a pen, while my memory is still clear enough to remember the smell of that valley, the sound of those creatures, the look on Vasquez's face when he told me they'd come from above. I'm writing it because someone should know. Someone should remember that in April 1945, 8 American soldiers went into the Bavarian Alps and 4 came back. And what killed the others wasn't enemy soldiers or artillery or anything that has a name in the manual of arms. We fought things that laughed like men and hunted like demons, things that Nazi scientists had pulled out of folklore and made real through methods I hope to God have been forgotten. We fought them with rifles and fire and desperation, and when it was over, the Army pinned medals on us and told us to forget. But I haven't forgotten. 81 years later, I still remember every detail. The antlers, the wings, the amber eyes that watched us with intelligence and hunger, the way they learned from every encounter, adapted, coordinated. And I remember the question Klein asked in his letter. Do you think they got them all? I don't know. I hope so. But hope isn't certainty, and certainty is something I gave up in a warehouse in Bavaria when I looked up at the rafters and saw hell looking back. My name is Raymond Foster. I was a corporal in the 2nd Ranger Battalion, United States Army. And in April 1945, I fought the Wolpertingers in the Berchtesgaden Alps. This is what happened. This is the truth.